If you're somebody that feels at home in the mountains, surrounded by lakes, and more specifically extremely moody weather, you simply have to add a Scotland van trip to your bucket list. And I have to say, after 5 days of exploring this country's wild west coast, iconic castles, dramatic mountain ranges, and the breathtaking Isle of Skye, this might just be my favourite road trip I have ever done, and I grew up in New Zealand, so that is definitely saying something. Grab yourself a cup of tea, maybe a wee shortbread, and settle in, because this is exactly how to spend 5 days exploring Scotland by van. Good morning, it is our first full day of our Scotland road trip. We arrived about lunchtime yesterday in Glasgow from London, and we picked up our van Rosie in Loch Lomond, and pretty much got on the road straight away heading up to Oban. We took this really beautiful sort of scenic drive that was recommended to us by the lovely people at Four Seasons Campers, which is where we have rented this van from. And on the way stopped at this farm shop which had really, really good coffee and was much needed. And then also at Loch Fyne Oysters, where we had these delicious oysters and also this really hearty, warm seafood broth, which in the rain that we have arrived to was very much needed. We arrived at our campsite in Oban pretty late last night, so today we only have one goal, and that is to just kind of meander around the town, get a feel for it, and then slowly make our way over to Glencoe. And we are starting off at this viewpoint, which overlooks the town centre and also all of the sort of sea and surrounds around it. So let's go and check it out. Time for a coffee stop at a local cafe, because if you couldn't quite tell, that van coffee from earlier was definitely not up to scratch for me. We also swung by Oban Distillery, which was really lovely to browse, but unfortunately all booked up for tours that day, so we continued on somewhere I probably love a little bit more, and that was Oban Chocolate Company. These are handcrafted in Oban, and truthfully I can never choose, so when we visit a chocolate shop like this we always just get a bunch of options to taste test later. We then made our way over to Port Appin and spent the afternoon wandering around this very quiet seaside village. But mainly we came here for a late lunch at the Pear House, an intimate boutique hotel with the most beautiful restaurant overlooking the wild coastline. The food here is local, seasonal, and everything you could want for a cosy, lazy, late afternoon lunch. Highlights for me were the seafood pie, which was so incredibly flavourful, and this absolutely stunning tart tarn doused in custard. And with full bellies, we hit the road to make our way to the next place we would be staying, which is one of the locations I think I've been the most excited for on this trip. Good morning, friends. We are in Glencoe today. We arrived at about 5 o'clock last night to the campsite, and it is a really beautiful campsite. We were so lucky. We managed to get a park up right by the lake, overlooking all the mountains. Waking up this morning, it was just beautiful. And this campsite is also known for having a lot of deer and I think stags roaming around. So we saw one really late in the pitch dark last night when we were walking to the bathrooms. And then when I was walking back this morning, I just kind of looked up and saw one just running across the field. So a very cool way to start your day. Today is packed. I think on my list we've got about 9 or 10 spots that we want to hit sort of along the road of Glencoe heading up towards Mallock, because we're getting the ferry across to Isle of Skye tomorrow. So we got to get going. We got a lot to get through, but the first stop is to find some breakfast, and I think the place we're going to find breakfast also has a lot of deer, so I hope that we'll be able to see a few more there.
Close all the curtains. Stay on the phone. We are the monsters.
Driving through Glencoe is probably one of the more emotional travel experiences I've had. The landscapes here just remind me so much of New Zealand's South Island, so in a way it feels a little bit like home.
Up on the hill. Answer the question. Is God on your side?
King's House Hotel, while a beautiful spot to stroll around, didn't have any deer to see while we were there, but they did have coffee, so that is at least a 50% win. We continued our way on 20 minutes down the road to Stiff Peaks Bakery, which definitely deserves the 4.9 stars it has on Google, and Ryan was just living his best life with this haggis sausage roll, the best of Scotland and New Zealand food all in one bite.
Under your bed, we hide in the dark. We are the monster, an army of one.
Now we have two big sights saved to the list to see today. The first is the little village of Corpatch, which isn't that far from Fort William. It's home to this absolutely incredible shipwreck, originally a fishing vessel from the 70s that landed on the beach in 2011 from a massive storm. It's a pretty mighty sight, given you can also spot Ben Nevis, the tallest mountain in Scotland, in the background. And our next stop on the road to Mallaig was probably a much more famous sight, the Glenfinnan Viaduct. This is most well known as the place to watch the Jacobite steam train, aka the Harry Potter steam train, cross the viaduct. A few good things to know though when you come here: all of the views that you see online are probably taken from hiking up the hills on either side of the valley, which is a good 30-minute walk from the car park. You will also want to check which direction the train you're planning to see is coming from. This will help you know which side of the valley to stand on and ideally see it coming towards you, unlike what we did.
To the beginning, we are the end. Hold on to nothing. There's nothing we've lost as you fall in love.
We stayed at last night was insane. All of those beaches along that coastline are probably some of the most beautiful beaches I've ever seen, specifically because they have this kind of strange combination of like this beautiful white sand that you would find on like more tropical beaches, but then a really sort of rugged, like coastal environment that like you kind of don't really get that combination together. So a really cool place to stay, but I'm sad that we've had to leave, but I am also very excited because today is Isle of Skye Day, and Isle of Skye has been on my bucket list for so long, so we got up really early to get like one of the first ferries over. If you're visiting Skye this way, I highly recommend doing that because you get to see the sunrise, which is just a stunning start to your trip. But now, again, I have a long laundry list of things I want to kind of see and do today, so let's get going. Our first stop was Portree, the largest town on the island. Here you will find a collection of quaint shops and cafes, perfect to pick up a packed lunch, as well as these colourful houses and a very cute harbour. We were also hoping to do the Old Man of Storr walk today, which is one of the most famous in Skye, but very realistically it was almost midday at this point and the car park for this walk was completely full, so we moved on to our next stops. The first being Mount Falls, which plunges down 55 metres over the cliffs of Kilt Rock and directly into the Atlantic Ocean. Truly impressive and otherworldly, and just one of the many places that you can easily stop off along this coastal road and explore. Now my backup hike for the day was this place called the Kerrang, and just driving along this road I was actually pretty happy that the car park at the earlier hike had been full. This landscape here was formed by a landslip and it looks like it was plucked straight out of a fantasy movie. Did about a 2-hour walk here, which was a really fun hike with more and more incredible views around each corner and with varying degrees of difficulty, we'll say that.
Blue dew, blue moon, kinda mysterious, shaded with someone I'm not really into.
Good morning. It is the last full day of our camper trip, which I am a little bit sad about. As you can probably hear by the wind and the rain, it is very, very blustery outside, but it's actually sort of like quite a cool atmosphere to be driving through Skye with. It reminds me a lot of if you've ever seen that film like Ghostwriter, where they're walking along the beach and it's all really like moody and windy and like overcast. That's what it feels like, and it's such a cool way to see some of these landscapes in Skye. I honestly kind of love it from sort of when you're sitting inside the van, not quite when you're outside trying to go for a hike. Today the plan is to do a couple more little things on Skye. We've got a distillery tour booked in for this morning, which I, as a whiskey lover, am very, very excited about. And then we're making our way over to the castle, which is kind of like the highlight of everybody's route when they do this type of like Scotland road trip route. And then depending on timings, we're going to kind of see where we end up tonight. We will kind of play it by ear, but we're hoping to end up closer to Loch Lomond, which is where we are dropping the van off tomorrow, just to, make waking up and preparing to drop the van off tomorrow a little bit easier. But enough talking, let's go and do all of those fun things. We pulled up at this cafe for brunch, a cosy spot which combines local produce with Scottish influences for a mouth-watering menu. The owner here actually used to run a cafe in East London before returning home to Skye to set up this one. And I just love that. There's something magic about returning to your home, bringing your skills with you from living away and enriching the local businesses and community. And of course, we couldn't leave Scotland without doing a whisky distillery tour, and we made sure to book this one ahead of time because, as we have learned, they do tend to sell out in advance. This tour was at Talisker Distillery, which is the oldest working distillery on Skye, tucked away on the shores of Loch Harport. On the tour, they talked us through the whole whisky making process, and we got to see and smell how everything was made and finish up with a tasting, but given it was only about 11 AM at this point, we opted for the takeaway kits to enjoy once we parked up later that evening.
It's hard to take one when your iPhone's full. Who's gonna save you? Who's gonna make you?
So Eilean Donan Castle is one of the more well-known places to see when you visit the Highlands. It has everything going for it, located on its own little island at the intersection of where three sea lochs meet, and it is flanked by the mountains of Kintail. The first castle here was established in the 13th century and has since seen many versions, and while I couldn't film the interior, I can promise you it was just as fascinating as walking around the outside of the castle. And with that very iconic last stop, that is a wrap on our 5-day Scotland van trip. Thank you so much for watching, and if this has inspired you to do more travel around the UK, then you might like to check out one of these vlogs here, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!